Welcome to another quick training with Dusty Bates. Today we're going to talk about load factor, and I'm with Straight Talk Commercial Real Estate Academy. If you're curious about us and our training, I'd encourage you to join us at the link below. Today we're going to talk about load factor. A lot of times owners and brokers collectively are not calculating this correctly. You're leaving 10, 15, 20% of your rent on the table. You're just not collecting like 20% of your rent. So what you should do is calculate load factor correctly. You should be able to explain this to your tenants, right? They're not going to come to you asking, why am I paying for 1,000 square feet of space when my base rent is for 800 square feet of space, right? You'll be able to explain that. So let's kick this off by talking a bit about rentable and usable square feet. Okay, these are two different things. This is how you're calculating your load factor. These are two different concepts. Number one, rentable square feet. This is the total building, okay? The entire building includes common areas, the whole thing. So if, for example, I rent to you a house, you rent the whole house, okay? This is your rentable square feet. Now, we may break that down by price per foot per month for you as a tenant. Usually with multifamily, it's just a flat fee that you're paying me per month, but you're renting the whole space as a building, right? So as a house, right? Not an apartment, as a house, okay? That's your rentable square feet. Now, my usable square feet is a bit different, okay? That's the only the square footage that is for a tenant's private use. That's all the tenants in the building. What private areas do they have? So really what that does is it pulls out a lot of the common areas for that. Okay, so this is the tenant's individual unit essentially is what you're thinking of. A lot of this tends to focus a bit more on office, right? Because you've got a lot of interior space that should be rented that is not private space, right? Walkways and bathrooms and all stuff that you're maintaining as an owner, but is not private space for the tenant. So a lot of these owners are not collecting rent on that when they should. Okay. Think of it this way. Okay. Here, let's go back here. Think of it this way. If I were to rent you a room in the house, okay, so I've got a four bedroom house, and instead of renting the whole house to you, I've rented you one room. And I've rented out the other rooms to other people as well, right? Maybe we're in like a college town. Now, you still have access to the kitchen and the living room and the dining room, all of these common areas, but you have your own private space that you've rented, okay? I, as an owner, should be getting rent for the whole house, right? You know, we shouldn't discount the kitchen and the living room and the dining room. I should be getting your portion of rent for that space, right? You don't rent that whole space. You rent your space plus your pro rata share, right, of the usable or the rentable square feet, which is counterintuitive, right? So the usable is what is for your private use. The rentable is the whole building, okay? Again, usable for your private use. So to calculate that, we have a load factor. And the load factor is really just the percentage of the rentable space, that total space, that is not usable or private space. So you've got all your tenants, and then you have your common areas. And what percentage of the total space is that common area that you not only maintain, but you should be getting rent for? Because I could move things around. If it's an office building, I could have bigger or smaller office spaces. It's easy to build those things out. What percentage of that common area is the building, right? Because it could be bigger or smaller depending on the layout that I choose. And the other tenants, all of the tenants, should be paying their portion of rent for that space, the rentable space, okay? You have your space, and then you have the common area or rentable, the rest of the rentable space that needs to be split up among all of the tenants, right? So I got a 4-bedroom house. It needs to be split up among those 4 tenants for that extra space that they all use, but they're not personally, privately, have access to. Hopefully that makes sense. Here. And again, think of it like this. What percentage of the building is not personal tenant space, right? Not just your space, but all of the personal space of the tenants. What is left over? That's rentable, right? So I could have built out that space for some tenant, but right now it's public space, right? It's publicly accessible. So I could have that be private rentable space for someone. Currently it's for everyone. I still need to get rent for that. And it's not private space for a tenant. So all of the other tenants need to kick in to pay that. So let's use an example here. I've got a 10,000 square foot building. Maybe 8,000 of that is usable. 8,000 of that is private space for a tenant. 2,000, as you can see, is public, right? Now I could build out that 2,000 square feet or so for some other tenant, theoretically, correct? But I've not done that, and that is public space. Everyone gets access to that. I still need rent for that 2,000 square feet, and a lot of owners are just collecting the usable square feet for that private unit. They're not collecting the rent for their portion of that leftover 2,000 square feet, which could be very expensive, right? And here's how you calculate. So this is the load factor. This is how you calculate what the load factor is of a building, which again is what percentage of the building is private space and what percentage is not private space or common areas, essentially. So we're dividing the total rentable square feet of 10,000 into the usable square feet, which is 8,000. That pops up a factor of 1.25 or 125%. 25% of the building is common area. The rest is usable space. Okay. Now you could flip-flop those, right? 8,000 of the private space divided into the 10,000 of the building, and you'd come up with a different number, right? I need to know what percent of the total building is private use. Okay, not the other way around. Okay, so dividing that into there, we'll come up with 25%, not 20%, or 70%, which would be a different number. So we divide the total square feet of the building into the usable square feet. And that's where we come up with the load factor. Now, how do I calculate my base rent? Because you're paying me rent, but also your portion of the public area, correct? Right? So I know the load factor is 1.25. Perhaps my unit is only 2,500 square feet, for example, of that building, right? And let's just, for round numbers, say the rent is $2 a foot. This is all monthly stuff, right? So if you're familiar with multiplication, we can mix and match these however we want. They'll come out the same. Multiply the square feet that I occupy by my base rent by the load factor, which gives me my portion of the rent for that public space, right? So my base rent is $62.50. It's not something much lower or 25% lower, $62.50. So if a tenant's wondering, why am I paying for, essentially 2,900 square feet of space based on my base rent? It's because load factor, right? You're paying your portion of all those public areas that I maintain and make look good and bring people in your door on the, on your rent. And this is just the base rent, okay? This does not have to do with CAM fees or net fees or any fees that you're being reimbursed on a net lease. This is just calculating your base rent. Usually, again, this has to do with office, sometimes industrial, sometimes retail, but most commonly this is misused or misdone or done incorrectly in office. So You see here. Yep, that's the end. Hopefully that helps. Again, quick training. What's a load factor? Hopefully now you can calculate what a load factor is. You know what that is. You can sound intelligent and knowledgeable when you approach owners on a building when they've got those common areas. If you want to learn more, we've got links below. We have a membership that we've got over 55 different classes on training and office and retail and multifamily and introduction to commercial real estate, all kinds of stuff. If you want to learn commercial, I encourage you to join us or otherwise reach out, and we will see you next time.